look, it's our friend Merlin Wendelbo. Sorry about the squinting. Just eyes are getting older. I've noticed a huge increase of conservative rebuttals on threads of liberal idiocy presented by such popular personalities such as George Takei and Facebook God. Do you think that in the end it might be said that the greatest achievement of the Trump presidency is the confidence it is giving sane Americans to stand up for freedom and to push back against the oppression and intimidation of the liberals and the political correctness that has been so pervasive over the past decade? Great question. Absolutely. I think so. 100%. One thing that you can tell is that they're getting pushback that they've never gotten before. And you can tell, and they don't know what to do with it, and they don't like it very much. Protests out in front of CNN, they weren't very big, but they were protests. They're not used to being the bad guys. Certainly Donald Trump has given people a reason to, believe that there's a point to arguing back. But I'm seeing more and more conservative rebuttals, and I'm seeing more and more members of the general public, the non-chattering classes, siding with conservatives and really starting to sense the lunacy and the ridiculousness of the progressive idea, because there's so much of it is its own contradiction, and since there's no end to it, since there's no limit to what you're encouraged to do, it gets ever more ridiculous, which I covered, I think, in the Republic of Emotion, that last firewall I did. The progressives claim to be feminists. They claim to be in charge, all about empowering women. But then they also claim that who are we to say that a man who says he's a woman isn't a woman? So now you've got transsexual athletes, and the transsexual athlete, imagine my surprise, is cleaning the clocks of these biological girls, and now they're in a quandary. And the quandary is, well, who's the biggest victim? Which victim do we side with here? They're both victims, but you created one of them. Maybe you created both of them. And it's kind of fun to watch, but it's also alarming. That's part of the pushback, and they can't. There's no room for them to be. See, Evan Sayed had this exactly right. The entire essence of progressive philosophy is that since nothing is better than anything else, you are not allowed to discern any difference or describe any difference, and you are not allowed to interpret reality. Because if you interpret reality, you can see that one thing is better than something else. And if something's better than something else, that means there's a disagreement. And if there's a disagreement, that undoubtedly means war and poverty and all the rest of this nonsense. So as progressivism continues to, well past its sell date, like bananas that are starting to turn from brown to green, it becomes more and more ridiculous. And it has to, right? I mean, it has to get more ridiculous. You always have to be outraged about something. And as more and more social problems disappear, you have less and less to be outraged about. So you got to crank up the volume. And that is a path that really just, doesn't end. It just gets more and more ridiculous, more and more narrow, more and more ridiculous. Dave Wellman says that YouTube comments are closer to 50-50 than the 90-10 they were, say, 2 years ago. It's really true. And I think look, I think it's because conservatives are fighting back and getting some airtime and not just taking it. Donald Trump is president because he's a fighter. Back to Evan Sayed again. He's a war president. He's a war president for this war that we've known about for 8-10 years now. And he understands how this war is fought, and he's very good at it. And as with, again, Evan's point, he says, as with Ulysses S. Grant, who was a drunk, or George Patton, who was not fun dinner company, we can't spare this man. He fights. He fights. And I think I'm speaking for many Americans. Some people are genuinely in love with Donald Trump and really think he's just terrific. And I am not one of those people. I'm one of those people who who sees a lot of things that Donald Trump does that makes the left just cringe, and it makes me a little uncomfortable too. But there's no question in my mind, none, that this is the choice to have made, and we can't spare him. He fights. If he's a fighting general, I don't care if he drinks, and if he's a fighting general and goes out looking for battle and wins battles, I don't care. I don't care if he drinks. I don't care if he's rude. Victory is victory, and this is a war for the soul of the country. So I've been very pleased to see this conservative pushback, and it's also a tipping point kind of thing too, isn't it, Merlin? When as I pointed out just a minute ago, when Facebook or YouTube comments are 95-5 against you, you tend to shut up, and the more people that start to express your opinion, the more likely you are to express your opinion, which in turn liberates other people whose threshold of moral courage is set at different places. So the more people that fight back, the more ridiculous they look. The more ridiculous they look, the more desperate they become, and the more desperate they become, the more ridiculous they look. And it's a great little cycle to watch. So, yeah, the progressives now are getting so ugly and so ridiculous. This Antifa thing is ugly. This safe space nonsense is ridiculous. Everybody knows it's a joke. I suspect virtually most of them know it's a joke. But in any event, yeah, the weather's changing for the better. I think there's no question about that. Okay.